Good afternoon and welcome to the informational meeting. First item on our agenda today is our City Council staff report by Deborah Owens, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just an exciting report to give you in terms of absentee voting. I know that I had sent you an email earlier today that we are at now over 2,000 in absentee voters so far for the city. Our high water mark before this election would have been 1,300. And you can see we've well exceeded that. Actually, it's 2,050, and there will be absentee voting tomorrow between 8 and 3 o'clock at the county admin building. So folks can still absentee vote if they would like to. In terms of convenience, if you're downtown, you might as well absentee vote. If not, the polls open at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning in 59 polling places throughout the city of Sioux Falls, and then close at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Election results will be posted at siouxfalls.org. We don't anticipate having much to show yet until about 8 o'clock or perhaps even 8:30 tomorrow night. And because we have so many polling places out there, we may take until about 10 or 10:30 tomorrow night to finish all of the ballot counting. So again, all of those folks who are working for us, we have over 241 are at the polling places, and they need to drive all those ballots in from all parts of the town and pack up everything. So that takes a little while. So we're hoping to have it all wrapped up in terms of counting by about 10 o'clock tomorrow night. But it may be a little bit later than that, depending on how things go. With such a large absentee voter turnout, as many of you know, we had anticipated to 50% turnout, but we are printing more ballots, and we'll deliver those strategically throughout the city tomorrow. Primarily, we've seen seen three ballot types that have had increased, the Central District being the main part. So we are working on, and they printed more ballots today at Brown and Sanger. Thank you, Brown and Sanger. And we anticipate having plenty of ballots, but looking forward to having such a great turnout and looking forward to the citizens being very engaged in government. That's pretty exciting from our perspective. If you would like to work for the election, if you're listening out on Granicus or on Channel 16, please give the clerk's office a call at 367-8080. We have had numerous people call in today who would like to work for that runoff election, because we do anticipate having a runoff election, but would continue to love to have all of those places filled by the end of the week, as we need to staff that again as we have an election in 2 weeks. And then also, if you don't know where to vote and you're listening on Channel 16 or on the Internet, please call 367-8080 as well. We've received many calls all week long. We're continuing to do so. Our office opens at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we'll be happy to direct anybody to the right polling place, and are very happy to do it. It only takes a minute or two on the phone. Again, 367-8080. All right, and then on to the 7 o'clock agenda, to the business of the council. There is one item that will be up for reconsideration tonight. It is the Vehicles for Hire Ordinance. The council has put that on the agenda through a vote of reconsideration at the last city council meeting. The main motion, if you will, or the ordinance that is out there now, would be to deregulate, or there would be no caps. Just to remind the council, when you are doing your motion and second on the ordinance itself, that would be to deregulate and to take away all of the caps. And it would simply allow, if that last provision, that sentence that says, a schedule of these transport rates shall be posted at all times in each wheelchair or stretcher transport. So we'll be deleting everything prior to that in terms of those caps. There is another amendment that has kind of been perfected through time. I don't know if the council would bring it forward as a substitute motion or not tonight, but I wanted to remind you that that amendment is out there. It would put the caps in place, but at a higher level, and those were submitted to the council's committee, Public Services Committee, from those transport companies. And then in Section 2 of that ordinance, that would also index those caps, if you will, those maximum rates that you could charge to the CPI for transportation, and have those adjusted annually starting in January 2011. And so, again, that would be a substitute motion, would be the caps. That is not out, that would not be part of the main motion that you'd be voting on tonight. You'd have to do a substitute motion to bring those caps back in. It would only be, if you vote just straight up on the ordinance for reconsideration, it would be with no caps to deregulate the industry. but save the fact that they would have to post those rates in their vehicles. And then many of you would receive, there was an email concerning the American Disabilities Act. We did forward that on at Councilmember Anderson Jr.'s request to the city attorney, or assistant city attorney, Gary Caldwell, and they're looking into that. That really is a little bit different from our Vehicles for Hire ordinance. The Vehicles for Hire matter is a narrow look at the rates, and that is all that you'll be looking at tonight. So just so you know, I think that is being reviewed by the city attorney's office, that initial inquiry, but it wouldn't be a part of the Vehicles for Hire ordinance at this time. Any questions?
Councilor Jameson?
I did have a conversation with David Allen. Did the rest of you, anybody talk to David directly? His concern for the ADA issue was that in the rates that were proposed, if a person in a wheelchair just went to a hospital to visit somebody that was there, would they be charged for a hospital discharge rate versus just a regular taxi rate? So he had just a clarification, and it's a good question, and I suppose those guys would be able to answer it better for us, but initially that was his big concern, and I did have a discussion with him about what our intentions maybe were tonight to maybe deregulate the pricing, and he actually owns a handicapped accessible minivan and thought, well, in his heart, he felt that maybe he could actually volunteer some of his time or do this service at a reduced rate to help people in wheelchairs. So he's got a soft heart, and right there is exactly the magic of the competition that we're talking about and that entrepreneurship that I hope to inspire tonight. But I think I got all of his questions answered. There might be something more specific that he's actually after, but I did have a conversation with him. I think he's good.
Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Jameson, I was wondering, first of all, thank you for your extra efforts on this issue because, again, it's an issue I continue to struggle with. Personally, I told someone the other day, sometimes my head and my heart on this one are kind of conflicted. But anyway, I was just wondering, is by voting on this tonight with the possibility of totally deregulating, have we given the public enough notice that we are now back on the deregulation angle, when in fact this topic was quite dead a few weeks ago?
Don't let me be the one to say if we've given enough notice or not, but I think it has been fully discussed. And I think anybody who's opposed is aware that it's getting revisited tonight. I think we've done all of our due diligence, I think, but I don't want to rush this along any further than the rest of us are comfortable with.
Well, and when I ask that question, I don't mean in a, I'm not trying to delay this from a strategic standpoint or anything like that. I just again was very supportive of reconsidering the issue and seconded the motion last week and so forth. And I know it's just picked up on a pretty fast track again on the deregulation, and again that may be the right thing to do. I just am still not sure, but I was just wondering, those people in the past who are confined to wheelchairs, which I clearly am not, fortunately, I just assume they don't have a clue that we're going to have this discussion tonight and this significant vote, and that's why I'm asking that question.
Councilor Brown?
I did have a conversation with Vicki Kirkfleet today, and she knew about the issue coming up tonight, and she said that she had sent out emails earlier today to people in the disability community that were interested in it earlier. So I don't know to what extent everyone knows, but she knew about it and on her own initiative had told others.
I suspect that there's not going to be a lot of new information to be gained. I think we heard quite thorough testimony in both the committee meetings and here on the council. So I think that I don't know that there's a whole lot of new information to come out. Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a frank and quick conversation with Mr. Charles Santee the night that we did that, and he had indicated strong preference to me that if the van company were going to be deregulated, that the cab company would, because he felt that it would ensure the competitiveness and the more people entering that market than would be just with the two van companies.
Okay. Councilor Anderson.
Well, as far as any new information, I don't think we're really going to hear anything there that's new, but I do think that the user community has expressed their interest and their feelings on this. It was pretty much flat that they were not against giving the companies a raise, but deregulation was not something that they really considered and did not want. So I won't be voting for deregulation.
Okay. Any other?
Just as a note, I did talk to Deborah Gaikowski, and she was actually meeting with some disabled vets at the time, and she was going to share the update with them, so I think she'll have plenty of input for us.
Okay. Any other questions for Deborah? Any other? All right, we'll move on. Next item is Mayor Monson. Anyone here from the mayor's office that wants to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Audit Committee. In a couple minutes, we're going to have a report by Lead Internal Auditor Rich Oaksel for the citywide disbursement audit report, so I guess we could probably wait until then. On Fiscal Committee, last week the Fiscal Committee met, and we had an update from Mike Hall and John Clemmy regarding the document management software program selection process, and it is down to 4 different companies to provide that, and I think their ultimate goal is to have a final selection for us before the end of the month. So we can look forward to that. Vernon, do you have anything else to add with? Okay. Other than that, that's it for the Fiscal Committee, so we'll move on to Land Use Committee.
No report.
Public Service Committee.
We originally had planned to hear the alarm ordinance today, but on Tuesday I'd sent out an email to the committee because Chief Barthel said, you know what, we're going to take a harder look at this because he'd heard concerns from a number of the council members. I think a lot of us have had concerns from citizens who have called, so they're going to take a harder look at it and bring it back to committee once they get that work done. So the short is no Public Services Committee today.
Okay. Any City Council open discussion? Councilor Jameson?
I'd yield the floor to Councilwoman Knudsen.
It's probably a bad sign.
Councilor Knudsen?
Is that just this open discussion you're saying,
Yep.
right? Okay. I love Councilor Jameson's comments. Is that just a couple quick items, actually both cheerleaded, which I know would surprise all of you, is one, just wanted to remind all of you and the listening public that The Sound of Music opens up on April 30th at the Orpheum Theater, and the box office for the general public is not open until next Monday, the 19th, but again, the Sound of Music will be performed there 3 weekends in a row. So that's my first thing. Item. And then my second item is just a really sincere thank you to all of you up here and all of you out there, and those of you, I'm talking about candidates who have made the incredibly courageous decision to step out and run for office, whether it's at one of these council spots, including the one I'm sitting in, or the mayoral spot, which again, we have such a strong field. And I just want to say on behalf of many, many citizens is I'm really proud that those of you will make the enormous sacrifices, personally and your families too, to run for office. And we have such a strong field all the way around. I don't want to get emotional about this, but I'm telling you, I do know how hard it is to campaign and constantly be begging relatives and friends for money. And I just want to thank you all very much and wish you the best tomorrow.
Dia, since you're so on top of everything, would you care to mention to the viewers regarding tomorrow's election and the update on that as far as times and anything like that?
Sure. I mean, I'd just like to remind all the voters again that the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow night. And I just am very hopeful that the voting, the percentage of voters will be off the charts. I mean, again, it's our community is a great one. It's incredibly important that every registered voter go out and vote for 4 council spots up here and the next mayor. And I'm just hoping, and the nice weather should be helpful. And I just, and also, sorry, thank you for some help out in the audience. And not only that, but of course, sorry. The school board election is tomorrow also, and we have 2 openings on the school board, and we have 3 candidates running. And actually, I ran for that office once. I happened to lose, but anyway, we won't go into that right now. But anyway, but that is a very important election, too. Our public school system is large and does great work, and we need continued leadership there, too.
Thank you, Dee. Councilor Jameson.
I wanted to get the lighthearted stuff out of the way before I said my kind of deal. I just wanted to bring up this issue that we talked about once before with the casino in Iowa. You know, I know it's not our decision to make right here, but I just can't help but feeling like this is deja vu all over again with video lottery. I mean, what kind of action do we see on the video lottery revenues as a city? And here we are, we're going to sit and watch this thing be built in Iowa, and they're going to feed right off of Sioux Falls. And I don't understand, I understand it's a constitutional issue, but why can't we take control of this issue and build this thing ourselves? $75 million is going to leave Sioux Falls, one way or another, whether it's in Iowa or in Sioux Falls. And why can't Sioux Falls keep part of that? And the city itself, instead of sharing it with some tribe, I should say, some foreign body, why can't we take it ourselves and use that money for what we think is important for the city? I know that several of you guys up here are running for office, and even others are going to be gone, but I'm not going anywhere, and this is it for me. This is the action right here, Sioux Falls. And we're going to get bled, essentially, again, either by the state or by some tribe or by the state of Iowa. And we can sit here and watch it, and we can all be opposed to gambling. It doesn't matter. The thing is going to be built in Iowa. You can still be opposed to it if it's built in Sioux Falls. I guess I'm just a little annoyed and maybe a little upset, maybe you can tell, but I don't want to be stung and used like some host city while some other entity just bleeds us and uses that for themselves. I guess I want to make a strong stance that we ought to take control of this issue, and if that means bringing an amendment to change the Constitution, then so be it. We just should not sit here and watch this thing be built in Iowa and then look back here at a year from now and go, geez, we missed it. Oh, well, what else? I understand that some of you are struggling with your comments that I read recently in the Argus that as far as taking a position on this, and I appreciate that. You guys are in a tough spot. But I'm not in that spot, and I want to make it perfectly clear that we are fighting for Sioux Falls here. And either we sit here and do something about it, or we just kind of put our heads in the sand and maybe hope it'll all go away. But it's not. We're just fooling ourselves. The video lottery is going to take a hit one way or another. But I don't want to ramble on here, but I just don't want to be bled again, just like we were with video lottery. And we're not inventing anything new here. Cat's out of the bag on this issue. It's not like we're inventing inventing gambling. That deal's done. So I don't need any comments from you guys because I understand you're insensitive. And it's the day before the election. How wonderful is that? But the city council, I just feel, and I'll make it my point, I guess, to make a big deal out of this. And I guess whatever it takes, we just cannot sit here and watch it happen. That's all.
Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Jameson, I really respect your thoughts on this issue and every other issue. And I'm not on the ballot tomorrow, so I feel very comfortable commenting on this topic. But I, in all seriousness, I don't believe that the city council is powerful enough to really touch this topic. I mean, I haven't visited with the President of the United States recently on this issue, but it's not only state issues, as you well know, but it's, a bigger problem with the feds. And, if I were going to be here for the next 8 years, or I should say 4 years at a time, not be too presumptuous, is that I don't think as a city councilor, even if I wanted a full-fledged casino in Sioux Falls, which I definitely do not want, even if I really wanted one, that as a city councilor, I would have chance of making much of a difference on this issue. So what am I missing from a city council standpoint?
Well, I would say that what we're missing is that an understanding of why we can't control this issue ourselves. Why? I understand it's a constitutional problem. It's the governor's deal that he can make with the feds, and the feds are going to follow whatever the governor wants. That's how I see it. But why do we have to be used like this, and why don't we have a say in it? Why shouldn't we have a say in it? And I guess maybe I'm just raising a little bit of a stink here, so that maybe the business community in the city wakes up and understands how important this issue is, and either comes together and either fights it in Iowa, or we take control of it and do it ourselves and reap the rewards of it. And if anything else, we at least raise the education to all the citizens who know what's at stake. And there's no stopping it. It's just it's determining which side of the line it's going to be on. That's it. This deal is happening. So maybe as a counselor, my job and my role is really just education and a fight to preserve this city.
Councilor Knudsen.
Well, and just a last comment, and again, just in a very friendly fashion here with you, is that, I've often felt your frustration as far as the gambling issues, the tobacco issues, and the smoking issues in South Dakota. So I've been there before on your same frustration level. Again, personally, I'm totally opposed to a full-fledged casino in Sioux Falls, but I'm just wondering if it might be helpful for you also for the next step is to just go ahead and have a conversation with our two senators and our representative or some of their top staff people just to get a feel for what a city council could do, the new city council, including you, on this issue.
Councilor Anderson.
I'm going to fully support Councilman Jameson's comments. I think that at least a conversation needs to be started here somewhere at some level. And if that's with our state representatives, the governor, and then, our federal congressional unit, I just think that this is a conversation that does need to happen. And especially since we're waiting, I think it's just a couple weeks before the decision will come down from Iowa on that casino. And if it is approved, I think it is something we have to seriously look at. I do believe two state senators did bring up this issue here about a year ago, and it failed. But I think it's something that we do need to discuss again.
And Councilor Knudsen, I think you're referring to our federal legislators because of the requirement by federal law that a tribe be involved if it's going to be outside of their natural reservation property.
Yeah, the Department of Interior is a major player here.
And as it was stated today in the Argus Leader, the Santee Sioux who run Royal River are interested in being a partner in something like this. So I think it's just a good conversation.
And I understood Councilor Jameson's comments to be not to have a tribe involved, though. Is that what you're...
I share with anybody.
So. Okay, any other comments on that topic or any other open discussion?
One other thing. I would like to formally request that we approach the Pavilion Management Group and have them do a presentation on their programs and what they view the future of the pavilion. So with their contract running out at the end of the year, I think it's a good time to have them come and just talk to us.
Okay.
An update.
Okay, we'll get that scheduled.
Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few comments here. I've listened and been thinking about this too, and the thing that the City Council does have some say about is that we're bleeding money to the north and south is the event center. Obviously, that would be a big impact player if we had one of them in town, and we need to press forward on that too. The other thing that I would say is, we talk about tribal sovereignty, and there's things in the paper about the horrible, poverty and things going on the reservations and stuff, and to that end, I can't say that all economic development that money goes to tribes is a bad thing, because if they can pull, go to education, go towards housing, go towards these things for those independent sovereign nations in this state, and there's 9 of them, and I've been to 5 of them recently within the last year. And there are some pockets of poverty out there, folks, that I've never seen that in the Philippines. I never saw it in Vietnam. I never saw it in Mexico. I mean, it's destitute out there. So I would just say that out of this here, if we lose, somebody else gains, and if it's them, I can't say that's all a bad thing, you know. The other part about it going, over there by Larchwood or wherever it's going to go. And I would say this: if the Iowans are going to build it, they might accidentally build it on our state, across on our side of the state line. But some of the revenue still has to come back here. There's going to be some employees from Sioux Falls going there. They're going to get supplies and things out of Sioux Falls. So, there is going to be some economic impact that would come back to this city. But, those things being said, I think, Councilman Jameson, you're absolutely right that we should start reaching out and investigating this a little bit more in depth. So thanks for your comments today.
I think under the Buy Iowa law, isn't it, is it 90%? That, I'm looking at Jonathan because you wrote the story, Jonathan. Is it 90% or what? Not going to answer. Anyways, a lot of that's got to get purchased out of Iowa. So
maybe we can get something like NAFTA that has Iowa in it,
Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Litz, you just reminded me of one other thought on the whole issue of a tribal casino possibility in Sioux Falls. It's really rather ironic and rather pathetic. I think that in South Dakota right now, as if we don't have enough legalized gambling, in my opinion, but that we have casinos in 8 of the 9 reservations, and some of them are in junkie trailer houses, and yet we continue to have that level of poverty on our Indian reservations. And so I would just like to do kind of just to remind all of you too that maybe there'd be a little revenue for the city on event center or whatever if we would ever get into a full-scale casino here, but believe me, the additional cost to our community would be tremendous in the long run.
Okay. Any other comments on this? I think we beat it up good enough. Let's go into our presentations. And the only presentation we have today is a citywide disbursement audit report by Rich Oaksel, our lead internal auditor. Rich, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. You should have a hard copy in front of you there of our a very short report. We try to make this part of our annual audit plan, just a overview of disbursements that the city makes. When I talk about disbursements, I'm talking about paper checks, electronic transfers of money. Every week we do several hundred of these. We have our pension payroll. We have our regular city employee payroll. So there's just a lot of money coming out of the Treasury. So we try to look at a sample of these payments to make sure they're proper, they're supported with proper documentation, and accurately reflected in the financial statements. Down at the bottom of that, page 2 there, your report, we kind of put them in 4 categories: payroll, pension, what we call general, and then miscellaneous. For this particular audit this year, we just looked at the general and the miscellaneous because we'd recently done some audits of payroll and our pension system, so we this year didn't look at some of those disbursements. When we looked at the general disbursements, we do a random sample. We just take, we take a sample of 50 disbursements selected at random, and we just make sure that they were authorized for proper purposes, in compliance with laws, rules, regulations, has a proper invoice or pay request, and then they're properly, to see that they're properly recorded in the financial records. And we concluded that they were, with the exception of one thing, which I'll bring up at the end of this presentation. We also looked at, as far as the miscellaneous disbursements, we look at typically some utility bills. They're handled slightly differently. They come directly up to the finance department and get paid just for purposes of efficiency and to avoid late payment charges. One thing we want to make sure is that we have hundreds of these utility meters all over the city, whether for natural gas or electricity. We want to make sure that that is actually on a city-owned property and that doesn't belong to someone else. And also that they're charging the correct rate. We look at the PUC website, make sure we get the right rate sheet, and compare that to the billing to make sure that that is all proper. And we did find that that sample of Mid-American and Xcel Energy bills were correct, that they were on city property, and the meter number matched. We actually go out and look at the meter number on site, make sure that matches the bill, so that we don't have any cases that we're paying somebody else's utility bills, which has been known to happen in other parts of the country. That's something that can happen. And we also did on the middle of page 3 there, we looked at the agreement that we have with the county for that Health and Human Services building. We have kind of a joint cooperative effort there. The city pays a portion of the total facility costs. The building's owned by the county, but we have that agreement. So we wanted to make sure that those payments were correct, and we concluded that they were. Now, the one audit recommendation that we came up with is, as kind of described on the middle of page 3 there, we looked at a sample of professional services contracts, specifically agreements that we have with outside architectural and engineering service firms, just to make sure that they were correct as far as not exceeding the agreed upon amount and that the hourly rates were correct. Typically, the way they come up with these agreements is the architect or the engineer figures out about how many hours they're going to need for that particular project that we're hiring them to do, and they know what their hourly rates are, and then they come up with maybe a grand total, sort of a not-to-exceed amount, and the city agrees to that for that particular project. On all the sample that we looked at, we never did go past that not-to-exceed amount, which is good, but we did have some cases where the rate sheet, what was on the invoice, did not necessarily match the rate sheet, like hourly rates for, say, an architect or an engineering technician or something like that. Maybe there was a slight discrepancy. And there were others that the invoice really didn't detail the hours or what exactly they were doing. It's just a matter of they provided the city agreed upon service, and they did not exceed the total amount, but they didn't have much detail there. So that was the basis of our recommendation on page 4 there. We recommended that all the engineering and architectural agreements should have the hourly rates spelled out within the written agreement, and that we should only pay for the work based upon those established hourly rates. In other words, we wanted to see more detailed invoices. We discussed this with our city engineer and his staff, and they agreed with our recommendation to change the way they're asking the architects and the engineering services companies to submit invoices to the city, and then we talked about how the city staff will be checking those invoices and how much detail we need to go into as far as verifying that. One question that came up during our discussion with the city engineer, he said, I'm on board with what you're recommending completely, but what do I say to my staff that says, why do we really care if they charge $61 an hour and they're only supposed to charge $59 an hour? What's the big deal? And he says, I'll answer that for you. He answered his own question. It's just a matter of appearances, for one thing. If you're not checking that kind of stuff, what other stuff aren't you checking? So that would be his response to the staff. That's why we're doing that. And another reason that I can come up with is why you'd want to do that is potentially you would have you could be paying for more than you're getting. In other words, if you have a not-to-exceed contract for $25,000 to design a new fire station, let's say, and the architect bills you for $25,000, it's possible that if you don't get a detailed invoice, you might be paying for more than you were actually getting. So that would be another reason why you'd want the detailed invoices. And that's just to prevent that potential problem from happening. So we're pleased with this audit. It's something that we put on the audit schedule every year to do that sort of citywide disbursement audit, taking a sample, looking at various things. And we were pleased with the recommendation was accepted by the Public Works, and they have an implementation date of October 1st of this year. And as you know, we try to follow up with these audit recommendations to make sure that they are in fact implemented, and we provide that information in an annual report on our audit recommendations. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Rich, you mentioned about the rate sheet that you found some discrepancies there.
Yeah.
How much money are we talking about?
It was really immaterial. I mean, we're not talking very big amounts. And a lot of times the agreements are just say, we're not going to pay more than $20,000. And every case, they did not exceed that. And it's a case of, we want to just tighten up the process. And that was kind of the point of the city engineer. He was saying, really, dollar-wise, in that case, it's not really material. But what he was saying is we need to, what else are you not checking? And we agreed with that. So that's a very good reason why you'd want to check that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I guess, I'm glad we're not exceeding, certain amounts of money. But if
Yeah.
we have a contract that says we will not exceed $25,000,
Yeah.
and really we should be paying $24,000, we're losing $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other point. If you don't ask for a detailed invoice and you're not checking that invoice, it's possible that you could be paying for more than you're getting. But we're not saying that's happening, but we want to prevent that from ever occurring. So that's why we made that recommendation to always ask the architects, the engineers to submit a more detailed invoice, and then having the city engineering staff checking that against the rate sheet, so that we make sure that we're...
So these amounts of money we're talking about in the audit are just hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, or?
Well, we looked at just a sample of that, and we
Yes,
didn't
right.
find it in too many cases, so we're probably talking, probably, a few $100s at the most, I would guess, yeah. We didn't look at every single architectural or engineering agreement, so I can't make a definitive statement on that, so.
Council Litz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rich, how are change orders handled in this situation? I mean, you're talking engineering and architects here, and I don't know if we have a single project that hasn't had some sort of a change order.
How are they handled?
Yes.
Well, there's city policy on that, depending on the amount of the change order. At some point, if it's, I think, I want to say 25,000, but at a certain point, you almost have to rebid that work. It exceeds it, you can't just do a change order. There's other requirements depending on the dollar amounts where the city engineer can approve it, sort of field change order, and there's other change orders where the mayor, once it gets to a certain amount, the mayor has to approve that. Like you said, that's being in the business, you understand that's very common. One of our first audits that we did as a new internal audit shop was to look at that administration of contracts, and we found that when you look at the percentage of change orders compared to the original contract amount, we were doing pretty good. It was 1 or 2% on average that are contract change orders compared to the original base amount. That's very, very low. So we and we can attribute a lot of that to just writing very, very tight specifications, very detailed on what you're asking for. So that makes those change orders less likely to happen. But that certainly is something that auditors look at. It's a risk factor. Change orders can be very expensive. They can get out of hand if you don't watch that. Yes. If you don't have good procedures in place. Yes.
Councilor Anderson.
Rich, on page 2, under results, just a question on part of a sentence here. It says, in most cases, disbursements were for authorized and proper purposes?
Yeah, so the only exception was those engineering and architectural ones. That's what we're,
okay.
that's what we're talking about there. That's a good point, though. Yeah.
Any other questions for Rich? Okay. Thank you very much, Rich.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other final open discussion items from the council? Okay, the Public Service Committee meeting has been canceled, so we will be back at 7 o'clock. We are adjourned.